Alright guys, let's talk about the second support, which is called the Hexblast. And what this support does is it actually allows you to explode things on demand. Unlike Impending Doom, where you have to wait till the curse expires, with this one you can actually just Doom Blast the shit yourself by just pressing the Hexblast, and it consumes the amount of Doom that accumulated on the curse, and it deals damage. There are a few actually unique features about this gem, and it's quite complex multi-layered support, and let's talk about this in detail. The first thing about this is you can see the damage range on that is pretty damn much bigger than the Impending Doom. It's like almost 3 times more chaos damage, so potentially that deals more significant damage on hit. The second thing that is a little depressing is the less area damage multiply, and this is less, so it's less damage in reality, so it's kind of a quarter of the damage has been taken away. The next lines are pretty interesting. All damage can ignite, freeze, and shock, and this is really cool. What does it mean that all damage can ignite, freeze, and shock? It means that any source of damage, pretty much any including the chaos even, if you have chance to ignite, chance to freeze, or chance to shock somewhere, that means that you can ignite, freeze, and shock with this source of damage. This is pretty unique, and it creates a lot of opportunities and makes this skill very viable. The next thing is very interesting as well. Chaos damage with hits is resisted by the lowest resistance instead. What does this mean? This is a chaos skill. When you hit with this skill, it basically, the enemy by default is resisting it with chaos, but not with this skill, because the game checks what the lowest resistance the enemy has right now and calculates all the buffs and debuffs on it, and then it checks what the lowest resistance it has, and he resists with this resistance instead of just the plain chaos. Now, by default, the chaos resistance is actually the lowest in the game, because most bosses have 35 chaos res instead of 45 elemental, but there is one big problem. We can lower the chaos res further with despair, but this is pretty much the end. We cannot lower the resistance even further. However, for elemental resistance, this is quite different. There are many elemental curses like the frostbite, the flammability, and the conductivity, which lowers resistance with the elements. But also, there's one unique thing that is on the tree, and this is elemental equilibrium. Enemies you hit with elemental damage temporarily gets 25 plus rest to those elements and minus 50 rest to the other elements. Unfortunately, it doesn't consist chaos rest, so it only works with the elements. So basically, chaos res is out of question in terms of the Hexblast, and it means that we need to debuff the enemy with whatever element we actually need to deal damage with. Being if you use fire damage, you need to debuff with flammability. If you're just stacking a shit ton of lightning, you need conductivity. If you're stacking some cold damage, you plan to use cold debuff, then you need to use frostbite. I'm using frostbite on that, and I'm hitting with the Orb of Storms on the boss to get myself the elemental equilibrium. This way, I get the massive, biggest way to reduce the resistance and get the most boost of the damage on the Hexblast. Okay, the next line, 35% more damage with elements per fire doom and hex with the most doom. Now, this is actually, I think, is one of the most viable ways to play with the Hexblast, because 35% more damage with the elements is really motherfucking huge. And I think that builds that really play with offensive elements like the poison or the ignite, for example, can be really effective with the Hexblast. I think that Hexblast ignite builds will be probably the best ways to play Hexblast as a whole. The next line, 50% more damage with hits per 5 doom on hex with most doom. The same as the Impending Doom, as you see, is the same 50% more. But the base damage on the Hexblast is way higher. It's literally like 3 times higher than the Impending Doom. And as you saw, Impending Doom damage is enough to hit like white to tier like 5, 6 maps. But what about the Hexblast? Well, I can show you some clips with that. The first clip that you see here is actually tier 16 layer of the Hydra with the Hexblast and free curses on the Blasphemy. Keep in mind, guys, this is the very high tier content, and I have very good gear, so it's not like you can do it in the beginning of the Heist League. The gear that I have here is 2 void batteries and low life with chevron with about 300% crit multiplier and over 50 to 60% crit chance. So this is a very beefy setup, and that's the reason why I wanted to test it out. I want to see how does it even perform when you actually have all the gear you have. And I'm running with 9 power charges, giving me a pretty stupid amount of spell damage and a shit ton of crit chance and basically a shit ton of crit multiplier. So that's literally like the most of the damage you can squeeze out of the skill to check it out in the deepest content, honestly. So what you see is I'm using free curses on the Blasphemy with the Hexblast. And the biggest question that comes to my mind when I see this is how does it even work in terms of Doom gain? Because, you know, if you manually cast the curse, it gains Doom. But if you run this on a Blasphemy, how much Doom I even have? There is no way to tell this. Unfortunately, the game doesn't even tell me how the fuck much of a Doom I have on the Blasphemy. It just says that I gain Doom while I'm self-casting, and, well, I'm kind of gaining something when I'm not self-casting, but I don't really know how much I have it, but it still works. The damage is actually pretty fine. As you can see, I'm trashing most of the content and mobs just explode, but keep in mind, guys, once again, this is 9 power charges, dual void batteries with low life. This is as much fucking DPS as you can get, and this is the reason why I decided to try it and see, is there damage? Well, there is damage, guys. There is damage, even with the unknown amount of Doom on a Blasphemy. But let's see what do I actually have on the bossing damage. I'm just next to the Hydra, and you will clearly see now what's the problem start once I finish up these Beyonds and Rares. So this is where the problems start with the Hexblast. Check it out. So this is Hydra. No crazy mods, no more life, just your average Hydra. As you can see, I have free curses. So free curses means I can permanently machine gun with the literally just machine gun with a Hexblast without bothering anything. I also run a Wither Totem, and I also drop Orb of Storms on it, so I'm basically doing as much damage as I can with all my crazy amount of gear, and I practically do no damage. As you can see, Hydra practically took no damage whatsoever. I took like maybe 5, well, maybe 10% of their health. And this is with Equilibrium, 9 power charges, dual void batteries, and the Wither Totem. So that's pretty much it. Now let's take a look how much different is it if you actually self-cast all 3 curses. I made this experiment to see if there's any big difference. Now this is the second run, and I'm actually self-casting curses now. I'm trying to self-cast as much as I can. Actually, like 3 of them I have. I have Frostbite to debuff the enemy. I have Temporal Chains, and I have Enfeeble there. Despair seems to be kind of useless, even though it shows that I deal extra damage with that in Path of Building. But I think that if the Hexblast is correct, then I still need to select the Elemental Curse debuff so I can work with the Elemental Equilibrium. So as you can see, the damage is pretty much still there, but honestly, I feel like the damage is higher if you self-cast the curses. I have more reliable explosions, but at the same time, this is much more dangerous because enemies just stay longer on the screen, and Beyonds can be a little big problem. But as you can see, this Beyond almost killed me, by the way, but I'm trying to hex it up and explode, and yeah, this is quite of a struggle with this one. I almost finished it up, but still doable. As you can see, there is still some damage there. No big deal. So this kind of interaction when you self-cast the curses, it works. 1, 2, or 3 curses. It's not really big difference. The only difference between the amount of curses that you cast is how much of a Hexblast you can press. So if you just cast 1 curse, like I mentioned in the impending Doom video, with the spell echo, you can press the Hexblast and it zaps 2 times. So the Hexblast repeats 1 more time, and it's for the most cases that's enough to kill most of the packs, being it magic or a rare. Even rares can be exploded this way, but sometimes it's not enough. You can cast, you can apply 2 free curses on the really like defensive fat rare, which has resistance. Let's say it has like elemental resistance. This is why you cannot explode some packs in one. Here, so you see this rare is pretty defensive there, but 2 curses worked wonders. So let's take a look at the Hydra fight, because it's a little bit different now. I'm almost there, just killing some Beyonds over there. So yeah, it kind of works. It kind of works. If you're curious, it does work. It does work, but we are approaching our main problem over here. Almost there. The gameplay is definitely very clunky, guys, and I have the clarity Watch's Eye, the legacy clarity Watch's Eye, which gives me a lot of extra yes too. So I mean, it's will be really fucking hard to survive unless you're staking some super extra defenses on that. So we come to the Hydra with the self-casting curse, and I will be building the maximum Doom. I'm not using Doomsday. I'm using the basically the Doom Gain. I took all the Doom Gain nodes on the tree. As you can see, the damage is practically non-existent. Because, I mean, it resists lightning, resists cold, vulnerable to cold. I use the cold frostbite, and I'm dealing kind of the cold damage, so I can actually frostbite gives me a chance to chill and freeze, and I can freeze with that. But still, the damage is way better than the Blasphemy variant. But still, as you can see, it's not really insane. And this is with, once again, I repeat, 2 void batteries, low life, 9 power charges, and 300% crit multiplier, guys. So this is some significant investment for testing out the build. At least now I see that the life on the Hydra is tickling away, so I actually feel like I actually do some damage this time. Well, to be honest, it took a while to kill this boss. I will not bore you down, and I will come to the conclusion, guys. So the conclusion is Hexblast is still a little bit of a mystery, because it's really impossible to tell how much of a Hex and Doom you've got on the Blasphemy variant of the, let's say, Blasphemy variant of the Hexblast. You can use hexes with Blasphemy, but it's really impossible to tell how much of a Doom you got. Is it like 0? Is it 10? Is it whatever? Is it even being gained or what? I think it doesn't. You don't gain any Doom. Definitely don't generate Doom. That's the reason why we are self-casting. But at the same time, there is still something which allows us to attack with the curses being with hexes being on Blasphemy. We still attack with a Hexblast. It's just a matter of question how much of a Doom is there, how much of a damage is there. Obviously, I can kill Hydra with this, even though it takes tremendous amount of time. So self-casting is definitely way stronger. At the same time, is way clankier for the clearing maps and clearing content, but is way more damage on the bosses. As you can see, almost approaching the kill here. So all in all, a Hexblast is a really cool skill, but I think it's lacking damage. If it had like twice more damage, it will be instantly more viable. So far, I think it will mostly be viable with gimmicks like the Archmage or the ailment damage like the Ignite. But for the self-casting, I think that kind of the self-damage, I don't think it's really that well, guys.